On a quiet Sunday morning in October 2025, thieves broke into the world's most visited museum in broad daylight. They smashed through bulletproof glass, grabbed priceless treasures that had survived exile and war, and vanished into the Paris streets in just 7 minutes. But here's what makes this story truly haunting. These were the private treasures of 2 empresses who fled into exile, carrying their jewels with them as their empires crumbled. For over a century, these imperial jewels remained scattered across Europe, hidden in aristocratic vaults, until France finally brought them home, piece by precious piece. And then, the moment they were reunited at last, they were stolen again. It's as if the ghosts of empire refused to rest. Today, we're going to uncover the extraordinary story behind the jewels that were stolen, the empresses who wore them into exile, and the tragic irony of a heist that rewrote history one more time. To understand what was truly lost that October morning, we must first understand the golden hall where these treasures finally came to rest. The Galerie d'Apollon at the Louvre is more than a museum gallery. Commissioned by Louis XIV himself after a devastating fire in 1661, it was designed as a temple to absolute monarchy. The Sun King chose Apollo, the Greek god representing the sun and the arts, as the gallery's theme, a visual declaration that the king's power was as eternal and brilliant as the sun itself. For centuries, this golden hall remained incomplete, a half-finished dream. It wasn't until Napoleon III's reign in the mid-19th century that the gallery was finally finished, its ceiling crowned by Eugène Delacroix's masterpiece, Apollo slaying the serpent Python. And since 1887, this magnificent space has served as the permanent home for what remains of the French crown jewels. But the collection you see today tells 2 very different stories. First, there are the ancient crown jewels, the official regalia of the Bourbon monarchy, jewels that belong to the French state itself. These are the pieces that survived the Revolution's fury and the Republic's calculated destruction. The Régent diamond, which adorned the crowns of Louis XV and Louis XVI. The Sancy, with its mysterious medieval origins. The Hortensia, that rare pink diamond Napoleon wore on his epaulette. And then, there are the imperial jewels, the private treasures of Napoleon's empresses, Marie-Louise and Eugénie. These never belonged to the French state. They were personal property, wedding gifts, symbols of love and power that these women carried with them into exile when their worlds collapsed. Their journey back to France would take over a century, a slow pilgrimage home that makes their theft all the more heartbreaking. The 2 collections. To understand this story, we must first distinguish between 2 very different fates. The original French crown jewels, those magnificent pieces created for the Bourbon kings, were deliberately destroyed by the Third Republic. In 1887, determined to prevent any future monarch from reclaiming these symbols of royal power, the government auctioned off the collection in 85 lots. Historic crowns were stripped of their stones, which were replaced with glass, rendering them beautiful but worthless. Diamonds and emeralds were sold individually to international buyers, Tiffany's, Van Cleef and Arpels, wealthy collectors from America to Russia. It was cultural vandalism disguised as progress, an attempt to erase the monarchy from history itself. Only a handful of pieces were spared because of their exceptional historical significance, the great diamonds that had witnessed centuries of French history. These survivors became the foundation of what would remain in the Galerie d'Apollon. But the imperial jewels of the 19th century had a completely different story. When Napoleon's empire fell in 1815, Empress Marie-Louise didn't leave her jewels behind to be seized by the state. She took them with her into Austrian exile, back to her Habsburg family. They became private property hidden in aristocratic vaults, passed down through generations far from French soil. When Napoleon III's Second Empire collapsed in 1870, Empress Eugénie fled to England with many of her jewels. Others remained with family members or were sold privately. They scattered across Europe, each piece carrying the memory of an empire that had vanished overnight. These imperial jewels never faced the Republic's auction block. They simply left France and waited, for decades, for the right moment to return home. And slowly, patiently, through donations, purchases, and the tireless work of museums and collectors, they did return. Not as symbols of monarchy, but as witnesses to history, as art, as cultural heritage that belonged to all of France. The Empresses and their jewels. Let me tell you about the two remarkable women whose jewels became the heart of this collection and this tragedy. Marie-Louise of Austria was just 18 years old when she married Napoleon in 1810. She was an Austrian archduchess, the daughter of the Holy Roman Emperor, and her marriage to Napoleon was meant to legitimize his empire by connecting it to Europe's oldest royal dynasties. Napoleon wanted the world to see his new empress draped in magnificence. He commissioned the imperial jeweler Etienne Nitto et Fils to create a parure, a matching set of jewels that would establish Marie-Louise's status as Empress of France. The result was breathtaking. A diadem, a comb, a belt buckle, a necklace, and earrings, all set with 79 flawless Colombian emeralds and countless diamonds, using silver and gold settings typical of the period. The emeralds glowed with that deep, mysterious green that only the finest Colombian stones possess, the color of power, of spring, of life itself. Marie-Louise wore these jewels as Napoleon conquered Europe. But when his empire fell in 1815, she made a decision that would preserve them for posterity. She took them with her into exile, back to Austria, back to her family. They became part of the Habsburg collection, descending through the Tuscan branch, hidden away from the political upheavals that would tear through France for the next century. For generations, they remained in aristocratic hands, a secret treasure that few outside the family ever saw. Then, in the mid-20th century, they began to emerge. In 1952, a Habsburg descendant sold the diadem and belt buckle to Van Cleef and Arpels. But what happened next was a tragedy of a different kind. Rather than preserve this historic masterpiece, Van Cleef and Arpels made a devastating commercial decision. Between 1954 and 1956, they stripped out all 79 original Colombian emeralds and sold them individually through newspaper advertisements promising an emerald for you from the historic Napoleonic tiara. Then they replaced the missing stones with Persian turquoise, fundamentally destroying the piece's historical integrity. That altered diadem was eventually purchased by Marjorie Merriweather Post and now sits in the Smithsonian in Washington, a beautiful ghost of what it once was. But the necklace and earrings survived intact. They remained with the Habsburg family until they were eventually acquired by Baroness Elie de Rothschild. And in 2004, in one of the most significant acquisitions in the Louvre's modern history, the museum purchased them for €3.7 million. The necklace contains 32 emeralds, with the central stone weighing 13.75 carats and 10 pear-shaped emeralds totaling 138 carats. Combined with 874 brilliant cut diamonds and 264 rose-cut diamonds, it's a masterpiece of imperial craftsmanship and the only pieces from the original parure that still retain their authentic Colombian emeralds. After nearly 2 centuries, Marie-Louise's jewels had finally come home to France. Then there is Eugénie, the Spanish-born beauty who became Napoleon III's empress and one of the 19th century's greatest style icons. If Marie-Louise's jewels spoke of imperial legitimacy, Eugénie's jewels sang of glamour, innovation, and the dazzling excess of the Second Empire. Her crown, created in 1855 by Alexandre Gabriel Lemonnier, is a masterpiece of imperial ambition. It stands 13 centimeters high and 15 centimeters in diameter, containing an extraordinary 1,354 brilliant cut diamonds, 1,136 rose-cut diamonds, and 56 emeralds, all set in gold. The arches are shaped like wings alternating with palmetto motifs, incorporating sculpted eagles. They converge beneath a globe made of diamonds, enhanced by a circle and semicircle of 32 emeralds, and topped with a cross of 6 brilliant diamonds. Eugénie and Napoleon III never had a formal coronation ceremony, yet this crown was created to establish their imperial legitimacy, to prove that the Bonaparte dynasty had returned to power and glory. It was presented at the Exposition Universelle in Paris the same year it was completed, a public declaration of the Second Empire's magnificence. When Napoleon III was overthrown in 1870, Eugénie fled to England. Through a legal settlement in 1876, the French state formally returned the crown to her as reimbursement for a sum owed to Napoleon III, converting it into private property. After her death in 1920, it passed to Princess Marie-Clotilde Bonaparte, and for decades it remained in private hands, a lost treasure of the Second Empire. Then, in 1988, the Louvre finally brought it home through a donation from Roberto Polo. After more than a century in exile, Eugénie's crown returned to France, the only surviving crown of the Second Empire reunited at last with the other imperial jewels. But Eugénie's collection in the Galerie d'Apollon includes other magnificent pieces, each with its own journey home. Her pearl and diamond tiara, commissioned by Napoleon III as a wedding gift in 1853, was crafted by Lemonnier using pearls and diamonds previously belonging to Empress Marie-Louise and Marie-Thérèse, Duchess of Angoulême. This masterpiece features a neoclassical design in the Louis XVI style, with a filigree silver-gilt mount encrusted with 1,998 brilliant cut diamonds totaling 63.30 carats, arranged in symmetrical scrollwork around 212 pearls, including 17 pear-shaped pearls. Despite being a wedding gift, the tiara became part of the French royal collection and remained in France after Eugénie's exile. It was sold in 1887 for 78,100 French francs and purchased by Albert, 8th Prince of Thurn and Taxis. It remained in that family until 1992, when the Amis du Louvre purchased it for approximately 935,000 Deutsche Marks, returning it to its rightful home after 105 years. Then there's Eugénie's diamond bow brooch, created in 1855 by court jeweller François Kramer. Originally the centerpiece of an elaborate belt containing over 4,000 stones for the 1855 Universal Exhibition, it was later redesigned as a standalone brooch. The piece features a bow with 2 loops and folded sides, completed with 2 braids of unequal lengths, finished with tassels and 5 articulated fringes. In total, it contains 2,438 brilliant cut diamonds and 196 rose-cut diamonds. Eugénie wore the complete diamond belt at the Palace of Versailles Ball, honouring Queen Victoria in 1855. At the 1887 auction, jeweller Emile Schlesinger purchased it for Caroline Astor of New York for 42,000 francs. It passed through the Duke of Westminster's family and other hands before the Louvre acquired it through a private sale in 2008 for $10.5 million, largely funded by a bequest to the Amis du Louvre. Each acquisition represented a victory, a piece of French imperial history reclaimed, restored to its rightful place in the nation's cultural heritage. The Great Diamonds. And we cannot forget the great diamonds that anchor this collection, the ancient crown jewels that did survive the Revolution and the Republic's attempt to erase them. The Régent diamond, that 140.64 carat cushion-cut white diamond of exceptional purity, was found in India in 1698. It adorned the crowns of Louis XV and Louis XVI, Marie Antoinette's black velvet hat, Napoleon's coronation sword, and finally, Eugénie's tiara. During the Revolution, it was stolen in 1792, but recovered from an attic in Paris. When the 1887 auction came, it escaped sale for historical reasons. The Sancy diamond, a pale yellow diamond of 55.23 carats with its distinctive shield-shaped outline, has an even more mysterious history, possibly connected to Charles the Bold, Duke of Burgundy. The Louvre purchased it in 1978 for approximately $1 million. And the Hortensia, an orange-pink diamond of approximately 20 carats, purchased by Louis XIV in 1643, named after Hortense de Beauharnais, though she never owned it. Napoleon wore it on his epaulette braid, and around 1856 it was set into a headband for Empress Eugénie. It was stolen twice, in 1792 and again in 1830, but recovered both times. These ancient diamonds and the imperial jewels of the empresses finally rested together in the Galerie d'Apollon, united not by monarchy, but by their shared witness to French history. The Heist. October 19, 2025 began like any other Sunday at the Louvre, but at approximately 9:30 a.m., just 30 minutes after opening, thieves executed one of the most audacious museum heists in modern history. They used heavy machinery, a crane or basket lift positioned in a construction zone on the Seine-facing facade, to access the upper level. They forced open a window into the Galerie d'Apollon and moved with terrifying efficiency. Power tools cut through display cases. The entire operation took between 4 and 7 minutes. 9 pieces of jewelry linked to Napoleon and the empresses were gone. Jewels that had survived exile, been hidden in aristocratic vaults for generations, and painstakingly brought home to France over decades of effort. And then came the heartbreaking discovery. Outside the museum walls, police found Empress Eugénie's crown, broken, damaged, abandoned in the Paris streets. The magnificent creation that had survived 170 years of history, that had been worn by an empress, preserved through exile, and finally brought home in triumph, had been violated once again. Several pieces remain missing, including a diadem, a necklace, and a brooch. Today, Empress Eugénie's crown is undergoing painstaking restoration. Conservation experts are working to repair the damage, to bring it back from the brink once more. The missing pieces remain the subject of an international investigation. Because pieces this famous, this historically significant, are almost impossible to sell, their very notoriety makes them unsellable. But what we do know is this: these jewels survived the fall of empires, exile, and over a century of separation from their homeland. Marie-Louise's emerald necklace, hidden in Habsburg palaces for nearly 2 centuries before returning to France in 2004. Eugénie's pearl tiara, returned in 1992 after 105 years. The diamond bow brooch, acquired in 2008 after traveling from Paris to New York and back again. Each piece represented a victory of cultural preservation, a testament to the idea that heritage transcends politics, that beauty belongs not to emperors but to history itself. They are more than diamonds and emeralds. They are witnesses to the rise and fall of empires, to the women who wore them with grace and carried them into exile with dignity. They are proof that some stories refuse to be forgotten, no matter how far they travel or how long they wait to come home. The Galerie d'Apollon will reopen. The crown will be restored. And the search continues, because some treasures are too precious to abandon, some stories too important to let end in darkness. If this story moved you, if you found yourself captivated by these jewels and the remarkable women who wore them, I would be so grateful if you would give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. There are so many more stories waiting to be told, tales of tiaras that witnessed coronations, necklaces that survived exile, and the extraordinary women who transformed jewelry into legacy. Which piece from this story touched you most? The emerald necklace that Marie-Louise saved by carrying it into exile? Eugénie's broken crown found abandoned in the streets? Let me know in the comments below.